Good morning, Chaldea, and welcome back to a special episode. My name is Cole.
I'm Jamek.
And I'm Jacob.
And as many of you will remember, last episode we had a cameo from our friend Huaito-san, but today we're going to be taking a brief interlude, puns, from...
I see what you did there.
From that story, because fucking Heaven's Feel Part 2 just came out, and we have to talk about it.
Yeah, so
we have feelings.
with no spoilers at the beginning, we'll let you know when we start getting into spoiler stuff. But
spoiler,
first,
it won't be very long before we get into spoilers.
First thing I think I want to say right off the bat is this movie is not for everyone. It is very heavy, very dark, and there's gonna be some content warnings for like rape, suicide, self-mutilation, that sort of thing.
Yeah, Fate isn't afraid to get dark at times, but usually it has a fairly uplifting tone overall. This is pretty dark.
This goes to places that the rest of Fate really doesn't. So, just be aware of that before you walk into this movie.
And also to note, it doesn't really do that nearly as much in the first Heaven's Feel movie.
No,
and
yeah,
that's why
if you've seen that,
that's something I really want to touch on. Now, obviously, I don't think you should watch Heaven's Feel 2 Part 2 Lost Butterfly without having seen Presage Flower. Or Presage Flower, whatever
it's called.
Yeah, don't watch them without seeing the first one, obviously. But they are very different movies. So if you watch the first one, you may not be mentally prepared to watch the second one. But I mean, to me, it didn't bother me. But I know a lot of people might have issues with it. So you're right. That's a good point to make. So overall feelings. Let me just throw this out there. This is probably either it's not necessarily my favorite movie I've ever seen, but it was extremely close.
This is probably to get very specific, my second favorite anime movie I've ever seen.
I'm in the same boat. Mm-hmm. Although the distinction of anime versus normal movies is not really a thing for me, because I just think those couple anime movies are really good. To be specific, my favorite anime movie, as I think is Cole's, is the fifth movie of Kara no Kyokai. Is that not true? I thought that was true.
I love that. No, I love that movie. I'd say that, it is eked out just a bit by Your Name.
Oh, Your Name. I mean, that's, that's fair. Yeah. Anyway, so back on topic. I loved this movie. I loved the direction and the themes and the heavy focus on a small subset of characters within the Fate Stay Night timeline, because that's one thing I love and hate about other things in the series is that there's always a huge cast of characters. Apocrypha is the worst singer in this, where there's a huge cast of characters and you don't end up caring about almost any of them until right at the end where they focus in on a smaller group. So, anyway, this is cool because it does something different with that.
Yeah, it's very much unlike any other Fate story you're going to encounter. It is not only darker than just about everything else, including Fate Zero, but it's not a story about the servants. It's a story about the other characters and more about the Grail War is just more of a backdrop. It's not a Grail War story.
No, yeah, that
in some ways, yeah.
Honestly, we're gonna get into this a little bit more later, but it's almost more like a horror story that happens to have servants.
Yeah, I was talking about this in our little pre-podcast discussion. The way it's shot and the way that mood is established in this. It is like a horror movie. The one thing, again, we'll talk about more later, is this movie is not afraid to be quiet a lot.
Ooh,
which is...
That's a good point.
In Fate kind of has a habit of explaining everything, which is both good and bad sometimes. But this movie is not afraid to just, be quiet and let the atmosphere build, which
it's
I
a
really
really
liked.
it's a really interesting distinction because I was hearing some people talk about this and they're saying I love the movie format because it doesn't give them as much time to well, I don't know what the word is, talk constantly, over explain everything. But I feel like it could be related to the fact that they have a limited amount of time, but I've seen Fate stuff where they have a limited amount of time and they still just talk a lot. I kind of suspect, cough, cough, extra, but anyway, no, I think it might actually be just a directive choice, like they really, many times were like, hey, this is going to be just quiet and long, silent, like, not even silent necessarily, but like, slow scenes, slow pacing. It was really cool. It was really unique and different.
Very well made movie overall.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think unless there's anything else, we're probably going to start getting into spoiler territory.
Yeah. This is your only warning that you're going to get. From now on, we are going to spoil the entire movie.
Yeah, like literally.
Pretty much.
We expect that everyone who's going to have seen the movie within the next year, effectively, has seen it by now because there's only a few, viewings available. Sorry if you haven't seen it yet. Go watch it. Don't let us spoil it for you. Please go watch it.
Yes.
So, okay, you want to start us off, Cole?
Yeah. So before we get into specifics, this movie honestly shocked me with like how well it was told, and like a lot of the storytelling was done. Hey guys, it's an animated movie. We should tell most of the story visually, which was really well done. Like the weird darkness tentacle thing, which I'm not really sure.
I think they just call it the shadow.
The shadow.
The shadow throughout the movie. Yeah.
The shadow.
We don't know, but the shadow knows.
It just is there, and it's fucking terrifying every time.
Yeah, and they like talk about it a couple of times, but they never bring up how Shiro is like seeing it like coming out of Sakura's shadow.
Yeah, with the weird like glitchy effect.
Oh, and like fucking like the scene when Sakura is like looking at the mirror and she
Yes.
walks away and
That
the
was
shadow
so
doesn't
my
walk away.
That was so.
It just pause. Then the shadow.
It was
moves.
so good.
That was like probably the best part of the whole movie.
Yeah,
I disagree with that, but I'll mention that in a minute.
Speaking of Sakura, throughout this movie, gets a lot of attention, which I'm really happy because she basically has no presence in like any other.
She's like not in either of the other ones, but in this one, she is the focus more than Saber or Rin was in their story.
That's true.
Saber is like out because she gets turned into Saber.
Dies in the first act.
Yeah, she gets turned into Saber Alter like a good 3/4 of the way through the first.
It was
movie.
pretty near the end, wasn't it?
It was like right at the end.
Right at the end.
Either way, your point is valid. Yeah.
But yeah, where was I going with this?
Hands out.
Saber's out. Rin.
Saber's out.
Yeah.
Rin is still in the story. She still she kind of forces her way into all the
because
plots.
this is the only route where you get to see the sort of relationship develop between Rin
that
and
is
Sakura.
that is a good point.
That was the one wholesome part of this movie is
Yes.
Rin and Sakura finally getting to be sisters.
That was really sweet. And so I don't know, like the scene where Rin has the picture on her desk, that is a picture of her, because I initially thought, oh, that's a picture of Sakura.
It's a picture of her, but she has the hairband that you
whatever.
always see Sakura wear.
That's
exactly. And then Shiro's like, super like ultra instinct detective. He's like, yeah. No, honestly, like. We'll get into that in a bit, but like let's go through a few of the topics here. So like the one thing we have to bring up, of course, because it's a UFO table movie, and I've decided that is how you pronounce it because the literal company is based on a table that looks like a UFO. So
I still like calling it ufotable.
Ufotable's fun, but anyway, whatever. The point is, this company is amazing at digital effects work, and they've made some of the best looking movies ever made. Cardinal Kyokai are amazing. The Last Heaven's Feel was fantastic, but this one kind of blew out of the water in terms of just how good of a movie it is. There's things about Prestige Flower that I really like, and it's like a really good Fate piece of content. But Lost Butterfly is just a damn good movie.
It is incredible. Like just the amount of time they're willing to invest in just setting up a shot, setting up atmosphere and mood for a scene is incredible.
So, their digital effects is amazing. It struck me right at the beginning when he's having this dream sequence, and you see the snow fly in his face within like a storm. I'm like, how many times have I seen snow in an anime and it looks like shit? It just looks like white particles flying around on the screen. And this was like, I was like, that's real snow.
The way it moves, everything about this. This is real.
That is real snow in that real man's face in this dream sequence in an anime.
Correct. There's no doubt in my mind. But yeah, and to brush into that, I think this will come at no surprise to you listeners who are actually, have seen this movie. The fight sequence, even though it was broken up into two different fights, was one of the best animated.
Mind-blowing.
It was amazing. It looked amazing on every level. The characters looked awesome. And the choreography was incredibly good.
It was great. I was telling this to Jake when we were driving home from the movie, where Herc goes full like Asura's Wrath on Salter.
Yeah.
I think my favorite kind of monster character is the one that dies it dies just fine, but then it just keeps getting back up.
It's actually amazing to me how this is literally, as far as I can tell, the first time we've ever seen Berserker Hercules ever actually just keep fighting after dying. Like, you kill him once in, like, the Fate route, or the Unlimited Blade route, works route, I think, once or something, and then he gets back up and you're like, wow, that's crazy. And then, but then, like, every other time he kind of just, like, dies. He loses all of his lives at once, or he gets chained down.
Against Gilgamesh, he did die several times, but he was never really able to actually fight.
Exactly, it was lame. This was, like, the true Hercules battle scene we've all been waiting for forever.
Where he just doesn't fucking die.
It was amazing.
He gets hit with, like, Excalibur Morgan, like, 2 or 3 times and just stands back up.
And let's not forget, Saber Alter was awesome in that fight scene.
That was
a really... And, like, you could say what you will about all of the different sword techniques she uses and all of the amazing choreography she does with that, but fucking the uppercut Shoryuken at the end of the fight to finish him was so cool.
That was really cool.
All that... Boom! She, like, blocks with the sword, then fucking hits him right in the face. It was so good.
Altars are scary again.
Yeah, dude, that's the Voice of St. Quartz tweet. Yeah. So good.
I will say, personally, this is just a personal gripe. I felt like the energy of the Excalibur Morgan sword, it was slightly jarring. It just felt like it was such a direct contrast to all the rest of everything, and I know that's probably how it's supposed to be, but it took me out of it just a little bit. There was just like a little...
I mean, I don't disagree with you entirely. Like, I saw it and I was like, oh, that's weird. Like, yeah, like, it looks unreal. It looks out of this world. And I think that was supposed to be the point. So
I think in a movie that otherwise is very grounded for a story about wizards fighting War for the Holy Grail, that, like, a giant purple laser sword does feel a little out of place.
It does, but, like, it was cool. Like, the fact that she opened the fight with just this sweeping beam.
Before you even see her. See...
It was crazy. I was like, that's such a wild... Like, usually Fate's this long, like, build-up of every single fight. Every single fight has to be talked over and over to death. And part of that's, I will say part of the reason I love Fate is because of their philosophical debates. And I really do love the debates of servants and how they interact with each other. It's great. This movie's not about that, and they get right to the point, and she shoots a fucking laser out of her sword.
And that's what's supposed to be part of the biggest difference in her demeanor is this version of Artoria is not holding back her power at all.
Not at all.
No. Yeah.
And she has plenty of it to go around instead of being tied to a shitty master like Shiro.
Exactly.
It appealed to the 14-year-old anime fan in me.
It was great.
Speaking of things appealing to the 14-year-old anime things in me, a scene that I know probably a lot of you are expecting us to talk about, the sex scene.
See, I was thinking of the scene where she just licks his finger, because that was the most sensual thing in the movie.
That was really fun. That was just straight up funny to me.
It was funny, but it was like also like if they animated a longer scene like that, like that would be like straight up hentai at that point. Like that stuff's like ridiculously well animated.
But one thing I want to quickly talk about with it is that was probably one of the most wholesome and tasteful anime sex scenes I think I've ever seen, because I feel like a lot of times this might just be jaded old me, but anime is either completely unsexual with like your typical harem character where nothing ever happens, or hentai, and there's nothing in between.
Yeah, I actually completely agree with you. Yeah, there's very little in between. There's not much in the way of loving, like, sexual relationships in anime at all. It's just not something that's considered, because a lot of it's for younger audiences who, you know, shouldn't be watching that according to their standards, or it's meant for perverts, quote unquote, you know. So like I'm not trying to be an ass about that. The word hentai just literally means pervert. So anyway,
I have nothing to contribute to this conversation because I only watch the so-called boring sexless shows.
I'm just saying, I agree with you. I think this is true. And yeah, so like I've seen a number of shows recently specifically that have had sex in them, and they've been better about it than, like, you know, because they've actually tried to feature stuff like Scum's Wish is a decent example. Like, there's sex in that show, a lot of it, and it's all fairly tasteful, but it's not, but it's tasteful in a weird way because they're trying to make it seem bad. Like, this is like, oh, this is sex that isn't really helpful to either person, and it's not good. But they're not over the top of it. It's not porn. It's just what it is.
Unhealthy sexual. Whereas this is like the first time I've seen in like a regular quote unquote anime a healthy sexual relationship between two.
Yeah, and you could argue it's a little not healthy because of
it's
Sakura's
actually,
situation.
It's actually very unhealthy now that I think about it. But you get what I'm.
I do. Yeah, like at least they both love each other. Like there's at least that, even if it's not necessarily a good thing for either of them at the time. Well, maybe for Shiro, it was probably okay for him.
He's probably down with it.
Yeah. Anyway, it was a very decent experience though. Yeah, not too bad. So with that, let's move into another thing. Let's talk about the story and theming a bit, because this is something that is going to, like we said before, it's dark, it's twisted. Honestly, it's really like horrible, and it's kind of disgusting at times too, with like Sakura's whole bug thing being infested, and literally they say like she has been violated in every way.
Yeah, and like, I feel God. I have opinions on that. I'm not sure what I feel about it. I feel like they are kind of writing a story with like very clear like sexual assault analogies.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the ending, right?
It's not analogies. That was literally...
Well, that...
We didn't learn until the end of the movie, but I kind of wanted to cheer when Shinji died at the end, really.
That was probably the most satisfying part of the movie.
Yeah.
More than anything.
That like fucking sucked. Like, Shinji sucked. It was not until Heaven's Field I fully understood the depth of how much Shinji was a fucking horrible person. But, like, I all hated him, but my God, I triple dog hate him now.
Yeah, and I feel it's really interesting how they're willing to go into that, and if they're gonna explore that more, or if it's gonna be more anime lasers next movie, because I feel like there
has to be a lot of fight scenes.
Yeah, I feel like we're getting more and more like wizard battle the more we go into the movie.
See, of the three of us, I've played the Heaven's Feel route of the visual novel, so I know the sort of source material, so I'm not really gonna speculate on that part too much. I will say...
I hope, it shouldn't be speculation at that point.
I will say almost all my favorite parts of this route are still yet to come.
Like, I mean, that can only be a good thing. But
I know.
Like,
the next movie should be
I have to imagine, that's the most interesting thing to me.
I want to see what the whole Sakura altar thing is about.
Dude, like, I'm so excited because the first movie was a Fate movie. It felt like Unlimited Blade Works to me.
Yeah, with more blood.
Right. And it was pretty still gory, I guess. But, like, it was basically just a slightly darker Unlimited Blade Works in my mind.
Yeah.
And then I get to this movie and I'm like, it's a completely different experience. horror themed. It's a romance story. That's another big thing I want to talk about. It's a slow romance horror story. What is this weird genre we found ourselves in? And the third movie cannot be the same thing. It cannot be a slow romance horror story. It has to be a faster paced action movie with probably some horror elements in it as well. I don't know, but like I imagine it has to be more fight scenes. Like there's a bunch of important battles that have yet to come, so presumably.
And yet there's very few servants left.
Yeah. Exactly, that's the crazy. Like
the only servants that haven't died or been corrupted.
Gil is fucking dead.
Yeah.
Sakura just ate him. Nom nom nom.
That's what I was gonna. That's what I said when I played it. I was like, "You're gonna be kind of disappointed."
I'm not disappointed. It was awesome. Like Gilgamesh had the fact that his sole contribution to the movie was him showing up, beating the shit out of her, and then her just like slurping out his leg while he's not watching. God, that was an awesome moment. And then immediately for him to like not even really stumble, just like stand still for a second and then go, "How dare you try to make me kneel?" I'm like,
that was a very good moment.
Perfect.
That was a very Gil way to react.
As much as like, yeah, he didn't have much of an impact, that was the perfect interaction.
But the only servants left that haven't died or been corrupted are Ryder and True Assassin.
Yeah.
So we're probably
we do have Saber Alter,
she
and
has
we
class
have someone else that you saw at the very end in the previews for the next one.
Which I missed.
He missed it, but I think we can talk about it. I think it's okay.
Yeah,
it was in the previews.
It's fine.
It was basically Herc Alter.
Yeah.
It was corrupted, blackened Hercules.
Okay. I thought fucking Alcides is in
No,
this?
not
I cannot
Alcides.
wait for that. But yeah, we're gonna see Shiro do some more fun. We're gonna see Sakura Alter. It's gonna be awesome. Anyway, so theming, back to that for a sec. Beautiful work on that. This is my favorite. It's my favorite part of the movie. Is the fact that it's a horror romance story that executes on that both.
The romance is really well done, like much better than Blade Works or Fate. To be fair, I've only seen the anime adaptations of those routes, but from what I can tell, this is the one that really does focus on the relationship between Shiro and Sakura the most, which is I loved seeing in this movie. Well, because I'm a huge Sakura fan also. But
even in Reen's route, Unlimited Blade Works, they don't get together until like really the end of the movie. I mean, they're kind of together after the midpoint, but like they're not a couple really until the end of the movie. It's just like an afterthought almost. They're just natural allies who eventually begin to love each other, basically. And it's a cute relationship, and I love them together. But like at the same time, Sakura is it's a romance route. It's all about the romance, and it does it really well. So I was really happy to see that.
As was I.
I actually felt emotions for both of them. I believed that they loved each other, and that was
the scene where Shiro is like standing over her, like debating if he should kill her or not, like and he's just having all these memories of like them growing up together. Senpai.
So,
and the senpai spam.
That senpai scene. Spam in chat, please.
One interesting note. That was a big moment in the visual novel because that's where I kept dying. If you don't have like a certain bond level with Sakura by that point, you actually try to kill her and then Ryder freaking murders you.
Yeah, because she's just standing there.
Yeah, she's actually there the whole time.
Time check. Where are we at?
We are at 23 minutes. Okay, so now this was a very good movie. It was not perfect, and there's a couple of issues that I personally had. For one, I think aside from it, yes, the movie's very dark. That's not a bad thing, but what one of the actual issues I had with the story, you never actually see how Shiro is like dealing with the fact that Saber is evil now. Like you see his reaction the moment that she's standing right next to him, and then he like never talks about it again.
Yeah, it's not I think let me preface this. I could be wrong here, but I think a lot of the problems I have with this movie is the fact that it splits up the story in a big way. Because there's 3 movies, they have to have each one have its own separate focus and feel to it.
Yeah.
The first one has its own separate focus and feel, and this one's literally at 2.5 hours, all about Shiro and Sakura. And everything else serves that end, and they don't focus on other stuff. I've heard they cut out a big chunk of the Ilya scenes from this movie.
Ilya has a part
that
in this
is
movie,
true.
so.
Yes,
I like the scenes where she's in it, but I've heard that they cut out some of the scenes with her. Yeah, as you said, like they haven't talked about that, and they didn't also go over the stuff about him inheriting Archer's arm very much.
Yeah,
that kind of just happens. We don't hear
me.
about
And
how Kotomine did the surgery.
And I do know that they're going to get into that more in the third one because it is very important in the third one. But I do wish that we had gotten a little more of. Again, we don't actually see how Shiro is dealing with anything but his relationship with Sakura.
And I feel that's because they want to make that was the very clear focus of the movie, and like for stuff like Archer's arm, I don't really care
until the third movie when it becomes relevant.
Exactly.
I'll be happy to see it then. For the purposes of a Saber's thing, that sounds interesting, and I would have liked them to delve into it more because there was that amazing moment when she jumps onto the rock ledge with them, and she just like points a sword down at him, and then she's like,
and then she leaves.
Yeah, she leaves, and that was a great moment. But you don't really see how it's affecting Shiro as much.
Exactly,
Shiro's emotions are all tied up in this relationship with Sakura in the movie, which, of course, like you said, the moment where he's like deciding whether or not to kill her is like one of these. It was a truly character-defining moment. It totally changes his character, and it's really interesting because they actually are very specific about it. They're not trying to make this subtle. They're like, "Are you going to betray yourself over and over again throughout the movie?" And it was a cool idea. This is the one timeline.
It plays into his theme of what does it take to be a hero of justice?
Right. Yeah, he evolves, and the concept of his whole hero of justice shtick evolves in a very different way in this route than it does in either of the other two.
Were there any other big complaints you wanted to levy?
Personally, I just wanted more screen time for Ryder. She did very little in both the last movie and this movie, even though she is technically supposed to be the most important servant in this route, where Saber was in Fate, Archer was in Unlimited Blade Works, and Ryder really hasn't done very much. She has like 2 scenes in the first one.
Those 2 scenes that she did that she had in here were great though.
In this movie,
the 2 scenes that she had in here were good, but they were still only 2 scenes. Like, she only has a handful of lines, I think, in the entire movie.
Yeah, she talks so little.
Which is part of her character also, but yeah.
Again, I know that she's going to be a bit more involved in the final part, but I feel like we could have used a little bit more setup of her character. We still... Watching only these, we know nothing about Ryder, except we have a pretty good guess of who she is because of the one very good scene.
But yeah, let me say for this, though, while you're right, she does not have a lot of impact in this. No servant does. Besides the big battles, which are obviously very cool, there's...
Archer had a good moment.
Yeah. But, for the most part, the characters, the servants don't do a lot in terms of character development.
I mean, that's what I was saying. This isn't really a story about the servants.
Right.
And, for the most part, aside from that little bit of, Archer, and, the little bit of the corrupted servants, Ryder is about the only one who has any sort of development, which is why I'm just kind of like, I wanted a little bit more of that, but that's just a personal gripe. I really like Ryder, so I wanted her to be in the movie more.
So before we end it, there's one more thing I would be completely remiss if I did not mention. The best scene in the movie, which is when Sakura has a dream. Sakura's dream sequence. I'm not joking. I think this is the best scene in the movie. When she has this weird dream sequence where it's immediately like you're like, what the crap am I watching?
It's this like fairy tale with all these like cute pinata characters.
It doesn't fit the theme of the movie at all. It's completely off base, not just with Fate, because you wouldn't expect that in Fate, but you certainly wouldn't expect it, well, unless you're Prisma Ilya. I literally was like in the theater like, are we Prisma Ilya now, boys? But like, no, seriously, like, it completely was at odds with the theme of the movie, and then they go on through it, and it's this slow, horrible build of dread throughout the whole thing.
Because something's about to go down.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a horror movie, so like, it's going to get worse.
The dream ends and you're like, oh.
She just fucking ate
it was
It
was an insane, like, mindfuck moment, and when I saw it, I knew it was going to be bad, but it was even worse than I had expected, and then it was just so brilliantly directed. And from what I've heard, it's unique to this adaptation.
It is.
There's like there's a similar scene in the visual novel, but this was a unique take on it.
In the visual novel, you see sort of a third person thing of, you know, the shadows around doing this, and then it just kind of cuts to all of a sudden Sakura is where that would be and Gilgamesh is walking up to her. So you don't really
laughing
see
about killing the ants or whatever.
Well, you don't really see how her brain is processing this.
Right.
That was a very unique take, and I think it did it in a very good way that was in fitting with the sort of horror tone of the
It was great because
movie.
it both built up the horror aspect of the movie
And it was just unsettling.
and it also really still gave you this idea, but it didn't sacrifice the idea that Sakura was in theory a good person. Like, she wouldn't consciously do this,
Right.
but her mind's all screwed up from having a lesser holy grail shoved inside of her, or the black grail or whatever they're calling it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
And we all, that I was about to get into spoilers there, and I'm not going to. I caught myself.
All right.
proud of you.
So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to the conclusion of this.
Spring 2020 kill me.
It's a year away at least.
At
Probably
least.
more for us.
Definitely more.
Well, thank you guys for sticking with us through this Good Morning Chaldea special. We will see you guys next time for the conclusion of the Huaito arc.
Alright, see you folks.
Later.
Don't get eaten.
That'd be bad.
Fate Extra is the most sensical plot of any of the Fate series.
Fuck you!